Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abby, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. I am pooped after the day that I've had. Ow, I hit my elbow. Welcome back, everybody, to Dear Abby. I'm your host. My name is Abby. Thanks for joining in today. Today we have a fun episode planned. Just a normal episode, but it's going to be fun. I've had a couple things that I wanted to dive into today, and one of them is I started medication like I talked about. We're getting right in. So life updates, I don't know if you want to hear these. Here are my life updates. Got diagnosed with bipolar depression, okay? This has been a new recent thing. I don't think I've had this my whole life. You know, if I were to guess, I think I've just had this for only a couple of years where I have these episodes and I get really depressed really fast, basically within like a matter of seconds. And after talking with a couple people and getting a couple, just talking about this with a couple different therapists, psychiatrists, that's what they decided. That's what they diagnosed me with. I've kind of talked about a little bit about my medication and stuff, but that's what it's for basically. And that's been a new development in my life. OCD is a lot more obsessive the way that I think about it, obviously, but bipolar depression is something that has not been impeding my life my entire life. That's really just been a couple of years, but I hope this, I don't share this I don't want to make anyone think that they have bipolar depression just because, I don't know, I have it. And usually if you have OCD or anxiety, sometimes when people share like their experiences, then you're like, oh my gosh, is that me? And then you go down a whole spiral. So maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's all I'll say. But it has been really helpful because I have noticed, I've been doing a lot better. And I'm like talking about this so nonchalantly. It's actually been something that's been really hard for me to like grasp. It just always feels like a lot. So when I know I've like been talking about how I've felt overwhelmed, but I have been feeling overwhelmed just because of that. And sometimes it's like I'm doing too much for my mental health. It comes to meeting with people, talking about stuff, and eventually it just gets like really exhausting, you know? And you're just like, I just need a break, and that's how I've been feeling. Yeah, now that I'm kind of set on my meds a little bit more, we're staying at a very, very low dose. I won't have to meet with everyone like once a week for a while, which is going to be so nice. But I just want to express my gratitude to people who encouraged medication sometimes, because there's a lot of negative things around it, which I don't know. I don't research this stuff, so I really don't know anything, so I'm not going to really talk about it that much. All I know is I've seen so much negativity around medication, and if I ever told anyone I'm on medication, certain people in my life, I feel like I'd get really negative feedback and they wouldn't be supportive, even though it has actually helped me a ton already. It's very discouraging, but I just want to give gratitude to people who are open-minded and are like, whatever helps you, like go for it. You know what I mean? Because I think that's a very helpful mindset to have in a friend and a family member, and someone who's supportive is like, even if they're not sure if it's going to help or not, if you're expressing, hey, I might want to try this therapy or this medication, the best thing that you can do to help someone and support them is do that exact thing. Like, you don't have to necessarily agree with it or understand it perfectly or whatever. You just are like, you know what? If that's what you want to do, I will support you and I'll help you in whatever way I can. I just wanted to express my gratitude to doctors and therapists and psychiatrists that really, really want to help people, that do a bunch of research, that really understand the medication, understand the diagnosis, and understand, you know, everything, and they want to understand instead of just like prescribe, and especially therapists who really, really care about their clients. There's definitely helpful people out there. So if you ever feel discouraged in any pursuit, but especially in mental health, if you feel so stuck and you feel helpless and hopeless, I have felt that so many times, and I'll probably feel that later on again in my life, but it gets better. And there are people who have dedicated their whole life to understand your disorder or something that you're experiencing. There are people who are so passionate about so many different things when it comes to mental health because they've either experienced it, they know someone who did, or it's just something that they fell into and they fell in love with. So yeah, I'm just a big believer in spreading positivity about getting help for your mental health because it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that's like you're not working hard enough on something. It's not something that should just be ignored and suppressed. Mental health is just something to be taken seriously if it's not good. We're talking a little bit about stigmas with mental health today, and also just like kind of compare it to like physical illness versus like mental illness, and just like the difference between the seriousness that some people take it, and also to kind of compare the two. And I just want to make mental health not like a pop culture thing and not like a shameful thing, but just a thing. Just a thing. It's just a thing. It doesn't need to be this big controversial discussion all the time. I mean, there's some crazy things that definitely need to be discussed. Most of the time, it's something that's you can get help for, and it can be helped. Anywho, we'll do some dubs and L's, and then we'll move on with the mental health stigmas and, talking a little bit about that. A dub for this week is that I've been going on walks. Okay, fine. I've gone on 2 walks. Today and yesterday. Fine, only 2 walks. But I've been going on them in the morning before I go to work. Do you know how hard that is to get up when you haven't been doing that for a while? Granted, I wake up at like 7 a.m. every morning, but I don't get out of bed till like 8, and then I have to go to work at 9, so I have like 15 minutes to get ready. Don't know why I do that to myself. And anyways, I've been going on walks in the morning, and I just needed to go on the walk. I can get stubborn. If I hear people tell me the same advice over and over again, I'm like, yeah. I've heard it all before. It hasn't worked. And then I reflect and realize that I actually haven't committed to anything, and I don't consistently do it. And I actually, don't know what it would be like if I really committed to it. So, and gave it an actual chance with an open heart, and an open mind. I've talked about like my faith in God on the podcast before a little bit. I'm not going to go super into it because I don't like to be pushy, but I have felt pretty far from like that recently, from God, just from feeling confident in that area. I realize it's because I also have been putting noise in my head for pretty much all day, every day. I'm either listening to music, or I'm listening to a show, or I'm with people, so I'm listening to them talk, and I don't really have a lot of alone time with myself without any noises or distractions. And there's like a C.S. Lewis quote, if you want to, if like you want to be far from God, then it has something to do with basically if you never have a moment of silence, you're not going to feel close to God, because that's like where he lives, is in the peace and the silence and the calm, at least in my experience. That's how I've felt him before. So that's what I like to do. I think it's totally different. Like everyone's relationship with God, if they want one, is completely different. So big advocate of that. But I definitely find him in the silence, and not like just like, I don't want to listen to church music either. I don't want to listen to like Christian stuff. I just want absolute silence. I don't want anyone's voice in my head. Okay. Just nothing. That's how I feel happy. When I don't do that, I feel far from like something that's bigger than me. And so I get really discouraged. And it just kind of makes you feel sad and empty, because it's like an important part of my life. The last 2 days have been really nice because I try to turn everything off, and I take my phone with me, but I don't listen to music. And I'll maybe listen to one song, and it's usually like a folk Christian song. And then I turn it off, and then I just walk in silence, and I don't expect anything, and I don't even really pray. I just like am quiet, and it's really freaking nice to start the day off, just like grounding myself just in the silence. It's been really nice. And an L for me is I've been really jumpy and irritable. Now, I am someone that gets very annoyed easily. I have been my whole life. I do not like when people eat by me at all. It's okay, because I've learned that it's just a thing some people have, that if someone's eating by you, it makes you feel tight in your chest. You feel like you're stuck somewhere. I feel stuck in my body. I want to punch something. Like that's just how I feel when someone's eating next to me and I can hear like their saliva and everything. I've learned though to just sit in the discomfort of that and realize that there's sometimes you just can't do anything. If someone's eating next to you, it's a good exposure is what I say to myself with basically everything now. It's good for you. It's a good exposure. And so I just sit there and I'm like, I feel really angry. I feel tight in my chest. This is really annoying, but I'm just going to feel this and eventually it subsides. Sometimes it doesn't actually. I'm just annoyed the whole time, but I don't punch anyone. And it's still just as annoying as it was at the beginning. So I'm not going to lie and say that anything has changed, but it is what it is. And so recently I've just felt even more angry and just annoyed with everything. And I don't have road rage. Thankfully, I think I've just been blessed with like being overly nice on the road. If someone cuts me off, I'm like, oh, like that's totally okay. I had that space open for you. Good for you. Go for it. And then I, sarcastically tell them to have a great day. On top of being irritable, I've just been jumpy. I don't know if it's the medication, but something is making me very jumpy where if I see something in the corner of my eye and I don't know what it is and it like moves, my whole body will just like jump and I feel like I'm losing my mind a little bit in that way because I'm not normally a jumpy person. I'm almost too not jumpy. I'm almost not jumpy enough is a better way of saying it because something will happen. Now, I don't know. I think eventually sometimes you just get desensitized to like shocking things. And so something loud will happen. And I'm like, oh, probably just my anxiety. Maybe I've gone too much the other way to where I'm like, not everything is anxiety though. Sometimes some things aren't anxiety. Like a fire alarm isn't just in my imagination. I should get out of the house type of thing. I guess that's a dub and an L. Sometimes you go too far with being chill. I'm just a cool, chill girl. I am pretty cool though. I hate to say it, but I think I'm pretty cool. And I think that because I've been told it after I've asked boys to pick me. I'm just kidding. I do think I'm cool. I think everyone should think they're cool. Because everyone is cool, Everyone's cool. Everyone's pretty. Everyone's funny. Maybe not funny. No, everyone is funny. Here's the thing. I'm done with dubs and L's. I'm moving on. I'm going on a side note that I've been thinking about. I think very much like a mediator. I don't like to not understand someone's point of view. I want to understand why you think that, where you got that from, what part of you believes that, how deep does that go? I just want to know everything. I'm more comfortable knowing a lot of things when I don't understand something or someone. I absolutely despise that. It's really hard for me to be okay with that part of OCD probably, and just let that be and let them have their thing and for me not to understand. But the way that I feel is I like to be a mediator and understand both sides before I say anything, do anything. I don't like to be ignorant, even though I know I am about a million things, but I don't love it. But what was I saying? The Forge, what does this keep happening to me? What is happening to me? So with being annoyed with not understanding everyone's view and how they got there, I am constantly thinking of everyone's perception of things and how everyone gets to that perception and that you can always change your perception basically. Like you can change your mind. Once you've made a decision on something, that's not necessarily stuck forever. Like you can always change your mind. Sometimes my OCD grabs that and it's like, well, that's scary. Does that mean you're going to lose all your morals because you're going to change it? Blah, 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 blah. It doesn't really grab a hold of that anymore because I'm like, oh, maybe, it totally could, but I don't think so. But you can change your mind, and so you can change your perception of things. So I just find that really fascinating. I don't know. Okay, I know. I'm going on a whole thing. I'll get back to the point. Everybody is attractive. Everybody is funny. Everybody is a bunch of stuff, is everything. Because let's say someone thinks that I'm not funny. Okay. I sound like I'm losing my mind right now. Okay, this is when I was, shut up, everyone. Shut up. I was thinking, if you perceive someone a certain way, like, oh, I don't find that person particularly attractive, but you don't call that person, you're not attractive. You don't say you are not attractive. My perception of you, how I feel about your looks, I'm not necessarily attracted to you. That's how you say it. I'm not attracted to you. It's really rude to call someone not attractive. Because other people perceive that person as attractive. I don't know. I just think about that a lot when I hear people say like, oh, just mean stuff about people, or, they're not funny and he's not cute and blah, blah, blah. But they say it as in like, you are this, you are not that. And I just think that's not very accurate at all. That's actually not accurate because it's like, I don't think you're attractive, but someone else thinks you're attractive. So, yeah, I just think it's interesting. And mostly because when you're on social media, and the more I'm learning like how people are with you on the internet, it's a very weird thing because I genuinely don't really care that much about what people think of me because I feel very secure with myself. I don't know. I just feel like everything's going to be okay even if everyone hates me. There is always going to be a part of me that is so scared that all of a sudden I'm wrong about everything. I've hurt people. I've ruined people's lives somehow. And I don't know. And it's going to be all my fault. Like that's what I'm more scared of than people perceiving me as funny, pretty, cool, something. Like I more care, like I don't want to like make your life worse. That's my biggest fear. Anyways, okay, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm going to bring it back in. Bring it back in, everybody. So those are my Dubs and L's. Let's get into the meat of the episode, which is, I have a hair on my microphone, which is mental health stigmas. It's important to talk about this for me personally because I find it very frustrating when you have people that still don't believe that mental health is a real thing, nor know what like the correct way to go about it is. And then you have people who are feeling more shame because they get shamed for asking for help, or sometimes because there's so much messaging around mental health now. And a lot of it, not a lot of it, but I mean, a huge chunk of it is very much a monetary focused messaging and all about making the money. Not that if you're making money, you can't be doing anything good, but you can tell if some things that are advertised is like just to make money, and to just get everyone to do it because then they get more money. And I feel like people who don't understand nor don't want to understand that mental health is a real thing and that it should be taken just as serious as a physical illness. It doesn't matter how many videos those people see if things pop up. They have the same opinion. They probably roll their eyes and are like, "Ow," and they're probably thinking that we're too weak or something and we just need to suck it up, or that type of mentality, which I totally understand. It's usually people who are a little bit older, or maybe their parents think like that, and so that's just how they think. And I don't agree with that mindset anymore, but I totally understand it. And if it worked for people where they are happy with their life and that's like genuinely worked, then go off, because that's awesome. And no one has to heal the exact same way that our generation is healing and that I'm healing. It's so different for everyone. So you don't need all of these things necessarily. But if someone doesn't know what else to do because they've exhausted all of their options, they've tried sucking it up and it's getting worse. They've tried doing all the safety behaviors and it's getting worse. They've tried just talking to their family and friends and it's getting worse. Then that's when the stigmas around mental health become very frustratingly dangerous. And even me now, I don't get as hurt by certain things, but every once in a while there are people who I know that will say hurtful things about it, and it still cuts me to the core sometimes because it's really frustrating and it's really invalidating to some of the really horrible times that I've had with my brain. Even though pain can be really uncomfortable to witness in somebody else, because it's scary, because that's uncertain. Like, what does that mean? It's way more helpful to acknowledge it and to take it seriously and to be with it than to minimize it or invalidate it. With that being said, this isn't necessarily like a stigma yet, but I've noticed that sometimes with a lot of messaging on social media about mental health, once anything becomes trendy or popular, people jump on the bandwagon. Everyone has mental health and it goes up and down. When things become trendy, then people who don't necessarily suffer with an illness start to try to, portray a certain way that is not necessarily helpful to people who actually are really suffering with mental illness, because they make it quirky to be mentally ill. They make it quirky to be struggling mentally. And I think that's where I feel a little bit uncomfortable and weird about it, because when you are actually in those moments, it's not like quirky and it's not fun. It's not funny. You don't want to create anything when you're at the lowest of your low in your mental health and you're in like a mental illness. I don't know. It's not necessarily quirky, and it wouldn't be good for content, because if you were to tell the internet, and if it, at least for me, if I were to actually be super honest and give the content of my thoughts and my feelings and tell them about intrusive feelings, intrusive images, all of that stuff, but be super transparent with how dark and scary and fearful it feels. It's scary and it's hard and it's difficult, and people would not like that on the internet. I think it's just when people are really actually suffering and then you see all this like quirky content with, I don't, do you know what I mean? There's so many buzzwords with mental health that are just thrown around. Anyways, I'm just saying that I don't think that helps the case of mental illness does need to be taken seriously. It's not like a quirky thing if you're suffering with an actual mental illness. It's, you need help with it until you can do it on your own, or, you know, manage on your own. But most of the time, if you're really suffering with something serious as a mental illness, then you need the help. And I think just some of the messaging of like, oh, it's just like a quirky thing that I have to deal with, and my intrusive thoughts are smashing an egg on someone's head. It's like, that's not really it, you know. That's all I was gonna say. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I don't know. That's just what I've noticed. Obviously, one of the main stigmas around mental health is that you should just suck it up, you know, that type of mentality. And I don't think anyone ever says that with the intent to harm you, but I do think it still can really hurt your freaking feelings really badly, because they don't know what you've experienced. They don't know the hell you've been through. They don't know how much you've tried and how much you've done the affirmations, you've sucked it up, you went to work and school and you tried to do all of those things and not care about how you feel and all that stuff. And it didn't help, and it just didn't help. And you can't change the reality that it didn't help. In their head, they're thinking like, probably, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to literally ask someone, but I'm too scared of those people, to be honest. And figure out why they don't want to just accept that maybe we are doing things a little bit differently. And maybe that worked for you, because fair enough, it totally could have. And you could be totally happy and calm and peaceful and be totally satisfied with your life. 100% believe that that is possible, because people are just different. But doesn't mean that your reality is the same for everybody else. How you get to that point is the same. I think it's very different, like everyone's healing journeys with emotional, mental health, stuff like that. So obviously that's a huge one. And when someone tells you to just suck it up and to pray more, sometimes you get that if you are like at church or something like that, which that one's like, okay, fair enough. I understand why you say that, but I have prayed plenty and nothing is changing. So I've learned that the answers are just to keep praying, have faith, and just keep trying. But then also you gotta try a bunch of different stuff. And the faith part for me is just like that I'll find something that works eventually. And then I'll trust that you gave it to me, and I want to believe that you love me and that you're good to me. I don't like trying to take offense to things or just letting other people hurt me like that as much, but sometimes it doesn't matter. It just hurts, because human to human, you just want someone who's going to validate the pain that you've experienced. Mostly because I would do that for somebody else. If somebody came to me and said they had so much pain and they had this happen and I didn't understand, I would not want to say to them that that pain is invalid because I don't understand it. It's like, so when someone does that to me, it's so hurtful. It is so hurtful. And I will probably cry about it for a while. I'll probably feel really angry. I won't say anything in the moment, because I sometimes freeze and I'm like, yeah, cool. Internally, I'm boiling and I want to cry. And that mindset sometimes is why people don't talk about stuff that they really need help with, because they're embarrassed. There's a million reasons why it frustrates me, but it just does. And I try to not let it affect me for that long, but sometimes it just affects me and I have to take a little moment to myself and cry or scream into a pillow and validate my own feelings of, this is really frustrating because of A, B, and C, but I want to be this kind of a person. So I'm going to calm down and I'm going to forgive them. They didn't know what they were trying. They didn't know how offensive that was to me, but it was offensive. So it's a very paradoxical experience to have, which I'm sure everyone who has a mental illness has experienced before. Anyways, so it's very validating to me sometimes when I hear people talk about how much it can hurt your feelings when someone invalidates your experiences with your mental illness. I just want to validate that. And also, I don't expect everyone to understand everything about me at all, but I do expect just normal respect that if I'm saying that something was really hard for me, that you're not just going to call me a baby and be like, well, you should have done this. And that's like disrespectful and it just doesn't feel good. Another stigma that I hear and see about mental health is that we like the attention. That's a huge one. That's something I still struggle with, being like, am I just doing this for attention? Now that I start a podcast too, oh man, my OCD will grab a hold of that and is like, you don't even have OCD. Like, you don't even have bipolar. You just like the attention. You need everything to be on you. And I'm like, you know what? That is a little bit scary because I have a podcast. So I'm like, do I want everyone's attention? I don't think so. I think I started to help people and to just, I don't know, relate to people, have it be a safe space. But also, I like talking. Am I super selfish? Probably. I don't know. But it is a message that I've received before. I totally get it. I totally understand. If you're not someone that has experienced mental illness, you're not going to understand it, and that's okay. I don't understand a billion other things about people's lives, so I don't expect everyone to understand what I'm experiencing. Again, it goes back to the same thing. Like, I'm not going to invalidate your experiences, but I'm going to assume that if you're struggling with something, that it's a real struggle and that you're not doing it for attention. And even if you were doing it, or even if you needed attention, fair enough. Because when I was really struggling, I didn't care who I bothered. I was like, I'm so scared right now. I don't care who thinks I'm a baby or whatever. I need help. That's a really frustrating stigma to have to defend against. And I do understand that there are some cases where some people do things for attention, and maybe they don't try to really get past their illness or really try to heal or get mentally healthier because now they've heavily identified with their illness and they don't want to give it up because it does give them attention, or they have like an excuse to not change certain things. And I fully believe that is the case with some things. So like I totally can foresee that when you feel helpless and you feel like there's a narrative in your head that's been on for so long, it's like you start to believe it yourself and you start to be like, yep, this is all I am. But just to be clear, I would say that most people that suffer with, if not every single one, that have suffered with really debilitating mental illness, it is not something that is done for attention. And if they create anything and they start a podcast like me, or they do anything and they talk about it a lot, it's not because they want the attention. It's because they didn't think that they were going to make it out, and they did, and they want to talk about that because that's inspiring and that's what helps them keep wanting to live. So I just really don't like that messaging about when people have mental illness, that they're doing it for attention, because let's just like trust each other's experiences. Another stigma that kind of goes along with that one is some people wear their mental illness as like a badge of honor. And this one's a tricky one because I do think that people who are recovering from specifically OCD, but really debilitating illnesses that are totally out of their control, like it's either extremely hormonal, so you have actually no control over that unless you're eating all the perfect foods, doing everything perfectly, or it's like OCD where it's behaviorally, you don't realize what's going on until it's too late and you're like 5 years into OCD and now it's chronic and it's your whole life is it pretty much. Those situations, when you're in deep and you have to work your freaking butt off to get out of a mental illness, that stuff is hard freaking work, and it takes grit and it takes dedication and it takes faith in God and something better on the other end. It just takes faith, and it is not easy to get to the other side, and it is not easy when you're in the middle of it and have been in the middle of it for years. So I see that as a badge of honor, honestly. So I do see that side, the recovering, pushing through, not giving up, sometimes giving up and then retrying. Sometimes that's even harder, is when you've given up and then you retry because you feel like you're not worthy of another try because you already gave up. I do see that as a badge of honor, and I think that's so impressive, and I'm proud of myself for doing the same thing and still trying to recover even though I feel discouraged like 99% of the time. Where I don't ever want to go wrong is if I take like my actual illness, like OCD, as a badge of honor and making it like my whole personality is my OCD, which is sometimes how I feel. And I try to have a healthy balance of, okay, I still have to do recovery work because I do have OCD, I'm pretty sure. So it has to be a daily thing. It has to, or it's going to seep back in. That's just something I have to do. But it's not everything that I am, even though I have to work on it every day. So it's a fine line. But I think sometimes if we stay in it for too long, it does become like a comfort badge of honor thing where it's like, well, I just have OCD, so I can't do that. Or I just have anxiety, so I can't do that. I know this might sound really stupid, but it feels really good to have someone say that they're proud of you for pushing through and recovering from a mental illness, and just trying, because if it's chronic and it's every day, it's so painful, and it really takes a lot of, and sometimes if it's a mental illness, we get more blame and more negativity around that we even have a mental illness. Any physical thing that people get, other people look at that and think, you know what, you're so strong for pushing through that, because good for you. I can see that you're hurting and I can physically see it, so I'm going to trust you. When you are suffering mentally, people don't see it a lot. So you don't get as much validation. And in fact, you get more like blame, and it's more shameful sometimes. I think this is changing a little bit, which makes me really happy to see. So if you don't get that a lot, I'm proud of you. And it's really hard. And even if you're not suffering with a mental illness, but you're just struggling because life is freaking hard and confusing, still proud of you, because life is hard, and keep going. Don't give up on yourself. You deserve to be happy. It's possible. No matter what circumstance you're in, it's possible. Things are painful and they take time, but it's possible. Sometimes when people say, oh, I'm so OCD, and they're fixing something, or they're, I don't know, straightening something up, it still pinches me in my heart a little bit, because I think you have no idea what that just like brought up for me, and the pain that those 3 words, those 3 letters have caused and inflicted on my life. Thank you for reminding me. But I try to encourage myself and tell myself I'm proud of how much work I've put into it, because I see it. Not everyone sees how hard you work, and no one can see your healing. No one can see your pain, anything like that. Same with grief, all of that. But you can totally validate your own experience, and it's nice when someone else does, someone who loves you, which I'm sure people have in your life. But if it's just you for now, you have to make that okay. You have to make it work, because the relationship you have with yourself is so important in a mental health journey, because you are all you have sometimes, and you have to have grit with yourself and be like, dude, I'm taking the lead, and we're going to go on this walk. We're going to go on this run. We're going to get up. We're going to get out of bed. It's going to be cold, and we're going to be ticked that we're getting out of bed because it's so freaking warm in this under the covers. But we got to do this, we got to do this. So just because not everyone can see the pain doesn't mean it's any less real, or that it's any less hurtful. Okay, well, that's all for today's episode. No Dear Abby today, so sorry about that. I have some that I could read, but we went a little bit over today from our normal time, so I'm just going to wrap it up. If you want to support Dear Abby, you can post the podcast on your story if you want. You can also leave a 5-star rating. You can leave a rating, review on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can follow, subscribe on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can comment, subscribe on YouTube. I would really appreciate that. And you can follow me on the podcast app and Spotify as well. If you guys ever have any suggestions for podcast titles, if you ever have any episode ideas feel free to message me on Instagram. I usually reply to all my DMs, but sometimes I don't get to all of them. So, because I have so many messages. Love you guys. Have a good weekend. Bye.
우회전 taking a ride to join a lake 눈치 보면서